We're joined today on RealAgriculture.com by Doug Alderman. Doug is the National Sales Manager with Pride Seeds. Welcome today, Doug.
Hi, Sean. Good to talk to you.
Doug, what is the status right now kind of across the province of Ontario with the corn crop? I've been hearing lots about dry, need rain, maybe some potential yield disappointment. Is that still the going concern?
I think there's a concern in some areas for sure, Sean. We were seeing some areas where, they desperately need a bit more rain. And we had a extremely wet spring, and crops were late. And of course, when you have a wet spring and the crop goes in a bit of tough conditions, and as late as they were, we need moisture through the summer to keep things going and make sure that root development's there. And some of the ones that were tough in are showing those signs for sure, and particularly where there's areas where there's been very little rain in the last few weeks, and it's starting to show those signs for sure. I'm traveling today across the southwestern Ontario area, and there's certainly areas where they're short of rain. But having said that, there's some other areas that we've had adequate rainfall over the last couple of weeks, and the crop actually looks pretty darn nice at this point.
So I guess when we look at the yield potential, have we sort of factored in obviously a lower yield than last year?
I would say overall probably we're looking at a lower yield. Those areas that have experienced rain and some good in the extreme southwest, and we'll say west of London, we've had good rainfall in and around the pollination time. And of course, with every year, we have to make sure that we've got good conditions going through that critical grain fill period. But obviously, right now, in that particular area, pollination looks very good. I would say we're probably 95% pollinated in the corn crop. And for those areas that have had rain and good conditions through there, very little heat stress through that period, we're in good shape. The grain fill period coming up here is going to be critical for us. Obviously, with a later plant than normal, we're going to need really good weather conditions heading into this fall. And but certainly, I would say last year was probably one of the record years as far as yields go, and it's going to be pretty tough to duplicate that for this coming year.
Yeah, you said that pollination has been good in certain areas. I've been hearing that pollination has been a bit of an issue in others. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's very true. And there's some areas where they haven't experienced the rainfall. We had some pretty warm temperatures, hot temperatures in the mid to the end of July, and some of that corn was under pretty good heat stress going into pollination, and then didn't get a lot of rain through that. So there's some sporadic pollination for sure in those areas.
Well, what are those areas?
I would say certainly on the sandier ground, if you get down in south of London, St. Thomas, Delhi area, and then there's a pocket up in through that Atwood area, just south of Listowel, Ontario, and across to even towards Seaford, in that western part of London and a little bit north, that have missed some of these later rains this last week or so. They've got some concerns on pollination and probably some yield potential. Having said that, though, if we get into this greenfield period, we can make up some ground there as well.
So I guess how much more time is required? We have a bit of a later crop, relatively speaking. How much more time do we need?
Well, we're going to need a really good September. I'll put it that way. And generally in the southwest, if we can get corn pollinating by the 10th of August, which was yesterday, we're generally in pretty good shape. So like I said, we're 95% there, probably a little bit more in the southwest. So we've gained a lot of ground, and we gained a lot of ground through July where we had heat. When we step back to 2009, we had a July in 2009 that we didn't realize a lot of heat, and that year the corn crop was a bit late. We were higher in moisture, and it was just because we lost a bit of ground, even though the corn went in earlier. This year the corn went in late, but we gained that heat. We had pretty much ideal growing conditions through that area, and now it's not going to be as early as last year for sure, but if we have a good September and we get through to a black layer, which we'll get into the mid to the end of September, and mid-October, we should be in fairly good shape, I hope.
So, if I guess pinpointing it, which area of Ontario has the highest, has the best looking corn?
Well, in my travels, I would say Eastern Ontario has very good looking corn. They were in a little bit earlier. They missed some of the heavy rainfalls early, so they look very good. I was there 2 weeks ago, and Eastern Ontario, for the most part, looks exceptionally good. I would say there's areas in Kent, Lambton, and Middlesex, Huron counties that look quite good. There's areas in Lambton County that experience a lot of rainfall in the spring, and some of that crop was under some severe water stress early. They needed this wetter weather that we've had over the last 5 or 6 days, just to make sure that this crop's staying intact. But we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, Doug, thanks a lot. And as we get a little closer to harvest, we'll make sure we check in with you again and keep in touch.
Well, I appreciate it, Sean. I think if we talk again middle of September, we should have a pretty good handle on where this corn crop's going to head. But I think right now, if we can get to average yields, we'll be doing very well. And I think there's certainly areas that are going to be somewhat lower than that, and there's going to be areas that are going to be fairly good and quite surprising, I think.
So for listeners outside of Ontario, what is average for Ontario?
Well, it's been steadily creeping up over the last few years because we've had some pretty good years, but I would say depending on the area, if we're in that 145 to 150 bushel would be sort of the average, but that has crept up over the last several years or so. It's come. A lot of guys have come to expect 200 bushel plus crops. Whether we get that this year or not, that remains to be seen. There's a lot of stars that have to align right, but I think we're in for, some of the fields that I've looked at in the last couple of days, where pollination is complete. We're starting to see some kernel development and so on. If we continue with this weather trend and this weather pattern, some of the fields that I've seen, we're going to be touching that 200 bushel.
Cool. Okay, Doug, sounds good. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you, Sean.